time for Dina Dahl and Michael Popok to talk about J.D. Vance and get to the bottom of the new vice presidential pick by Donald Trump. They always say that a candidate for president should be judged by a couple of major decisions. One, how he runs his campaign, and we'll know more about that. We've seen it already, and we'll know more about it during the Milwaukee convention, and who he picks for vice president and why. Now, I told people around my life that after the Pennsylvania failed assassination attempt that I didn't think that boded well for J.D. Vance, a 39-year-old person who was a year and a half in the Senate, never really held a job other than as a venture capitalist, and wrote a book. I didn't think that is what Donald Trump would think the country would need to assure them of a smooth transition and continuity at that moment. I mean, that's Obama. That's Obama white and light as far as people are concerned. But J.D. Vance has done a metamorphosis before our very eyes. And I want to get Dina Dahl's view on this. If you listen to the 2016 J.D. Vance, and I'll just read you a few things before we play them for you. And this is not me. This is not my words. This is your new Republican vice presidential candidate. Donald Trump is an idiot. He's America's Adolf Hitler. He is a needle in the arm of America. He's reprehensible, he's noxious, and he's leading us to a very dark place. That's J.D. Vance in 2016 on various talk shows pushing his book, Hillbilly Elegy. He told everyone who would listen that he was a never-Trumper, a non-Trumper, and did not understood why he appealed. Trump appealed to rural America, to the working white poor, but thought it was a very bad, dark place. Contrast that with J.D. Vance, within moments of the shooting in Pennsylvania. It's hard to believe that these are even the same people. We're going to have to try to figure out a way to square it, Dina, on this hot take. This is what he said moments after the shooting, so that there's no doubt. I want to make this clear. This was not the Democrats making political hay out of an attempted political assassination of a candidate that was opposing them. This was the Republicans. And now I saw this and I said, oh, this is the guy that's going to be the vice president with this kind of tweet. Here's what he said. Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. I want to explore J.D. Vance, his shape-shifting since 2016, and take a look at people in his life, including Peter Thiel, who is the venture capitalist, Peter Thiel, the venture capitalist out of Silicon Valley, where Dina Dahl is sort of located, and talk about his influence and his view on women, on J.D. Vance, and his view on abortion, which he believes should be nationally banned. Come on in, Dina. Let's chat.
Okay. And I think that a really important thing about J.D. Vance and his, changing his tune is because he is going to be so close to the presidency. Donald Trump is older. We have no idea how long he will be able to stay in office and do the job. And so here's J.D. Vance. Not only is he, like you said, vastly less qualified than Obama was at the time, and they're so hypocritical because they said Obama was not qualified enough. But the voters have a right to know what he thinks and what he believes and what he would do as president. And you have no idea because he sounds like he says whatever he wants at the time. So at the time in 2016, his comments of being a never Trumper, he tied it to his roots, his religious roots, his roots as a working class white man in America. And that, elevated him. That book at that time elevated him. He was the opposing person. Now he gets to blame the assassination attempt on Biden, which makes zero sense because Biden doesn't use violent rhetoric. But he does it because he knows that's what Trump wants to hear. So who on earth is J.D. Vance? What on earth does he believe? What will he do for the American public? Who knows? Who knows? And that's really dangerous to have somebody so close to the presidency that you have no idea what they believe. Was he lying then? Is he lying now? And the other thing I think is interesting too is we've seen this. We've seen politicians willing to put aside any beliefs they may have. Let's say 2016 was his actual belief because they want the political power. Mike Pence did this. He, in the Access Hollywood tape, the type of evangelical Christian he was, he didn't even have dinner with a woman who wasn't his wife, was willing to still support a man who said that he gropes any woman that he wants because he's so famous. He obviously put aside his own personal beliefs for that political gain of the presidency. J.D. Vance is willing to put aside a peaceful transfer of power. He got elected because he was willing to endorse the fact that, this lie, right? The big lie. He thinks that's okay. He's willing to do that. Don't for one second think that Trump is not going to ask him to do something else that is going to go beyond what he's willing to do. Pence was then asked to, not abide by the Constitution and stop the peaceful transfer of power. And that was his limit. J.D. Vance is going to have a limit. I don't know what you think, Popok, but I don't think Trump is going to only ask him to do things that are within the bounds of what he's willing to do. He's going to be asked to do something that is a step beyond. And, because Trump does that. He takes. He's willing to do things that the rest of us think are amoral, illegal. And I think J.D. Vance is going to get tested at some point. And he may be willing to set aside the Constitution and support the big lie. But there'll probably be something else Trump asks him to do. And what will he do with that? And unfortunately, because he's changed his mind so many times, voters won't know ahead of time.
He's a shape-shifting chameleon that's untrustworthy from an integrity standpoint. Is he he's obviously not the J.D. Vance of 2016. That was very appealing and award-winning with Hillbilly Elegy. Now we have to conclude that he's under the influence of people like Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel wrote in 2009, and this is the guy that funded J.D. Vance's political career, worked with him in venture capital, and is considered to be one of his gurus. Well, let's look at his views. Peter Thiel thinks that it's an abomination that women were given the right to vote in 1920. He said that women being given the right to vote undermines freedom in a democracy, and that libertarians like Peter Thiel have difficulty working with women in that way. How much has that influenced J.D. Vance in his decision, which I'm sure he's going to have to try to soften now, in his position that there should be a national federal ban on abortion? J.D. Vance is going to have to answer for the positions that he's taken, even the ones that are now inconsistent with the president or the president that he's running with, Donald Trump. I mean, I know he's going to point to Trump and say, well, that would be my position, but I got to follow what my boss wants and the party platform. So that's inconsistent with the party platform. So that won't be me. I'm going to go to a couple of clips of J.D. Vance. First of all, he took it all down when he decided to start bootlicking Donald Trump. But on Facebook in 2016, and in social media posts, he called Trump a cynical a-hole and America's Hitler. Donald Trump hasn't changed since that 2016 period. So who's changed? It's almost like that movie Manchurian Candidate. I'm talking about the one with Frank Sinatra, not the one with Denzel Washington. Like, what are you to make of this candidate that you can't get he's such a slippery, you can't get a handle on him. And this is the guy that's going to be one heartbeat potentially away from the presidency, working for a candidate that just survived an assassination attempt. I mean, I think that shows tremendously poor judgment by Donald Trump to pick this inexperienced year-and-a-half-long senator who, by his own admission in 2016, in the preface to his book, Hillbilly Elegy, he said, I haven't accomplished anything great in my entire life. And then nothing's changed in the last 8 years, other than he got bankrolled and got a Senate seat purchased and paid for and bought and paid for by his Silicon Valley sugar daddy. I mean, other than that, what has he accomplished? Other than, as you said, trying to now align himself with the coattails of Donald Trump to become a vice president. I'm going to say this out loud. J.D. Vance is not qualified to be vice president of the United States, and he's certainly not qualified to be one heartbeat potentially away from the presidency. And when you compare him to Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor in San Francisco, the attorney general of California, a senator who actually got things done, and a vice president for almost 4 years and 60 years old with life experience to match, is infinitely more qualified to be the president of the United States should that unfortunate occurrence happen. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. Developing healthy coping skills empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and many have a misconception that therapy is just for people who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. And the best part? It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/legalaf today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/legalaf. Let's go to when J.D. Vance was selling books instead of selling his soul on the Charlie Rose show, of all places. Let's roll a clip from Charlie Rose.
And, that feeling, unfortunately, if you think about the political dialogue that we're already starting to have, both on the left and the right, there's a movement to sort of gloat over the fact that the elites were right about Donald Trump, right? I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. And I've noticed this willingness from people who think a lot like I do that, look, we told you so. To all these white working class voters, we told you so. We told you that Trump was going to be a terrible candidate. We told you that you were an idiot if you voted for him. The problem is, if you take that attitude of sort of gloating over Trump's defeat, then you're playing into the very thing that gave rise to Trump in the first place, which is a feeling that the elites think that they're smarter than you and just think you're a bunch of idiots.
I'm not a Trumper, never have been, never will. Let's go to the same year, his interview with Terry Gross, then on NPR's Fresh Air.
You describe yourself as conservative, and you've written for the National Review, a conservative magazine. You've become kind of famous for an article or two in which you try to explain why, a lot of poor people would be voting for Trump. And in your writing and in your discussions, you've called Trump's promises the needle in America's collective vein. You've described Trump as the new pain reliever, trying to make comparisons between, narcoticizing pain and what Trump is trying to do in explaining things away, easy solutions. Do you know a lot of people who are going to be voting for Trump? Yeah?
I do. A lot of people in my family are going to be voting for Trump, a lot of my neighbors and friends from back home. So it's definitely a phenomenon I think recognize and frankly saw coming pretty early. It's interesting that I don't think the Trump phenomenon is exclusively about the white poor. I think that it's more about the white working class, folks who aren't necessarily economically destitute, but in some ways feel very culturally isolated and very pessimistic about the future. That's one of the biggest predictors of whether someone will support Donald Trump. It may be the biggest predictor is the belief that America's headed in the wrong direction, the belief that your kids are not going to have a better life than you did. And that cynicism really breeds frustration at political elites. But frankly, that frustration needs to find a better outlet than Donald Trump. And that's why I've made some of the analogies that I have, because I don't think that he's going to make the problem better. I think, like you said, he is in some ways a pain reliever. He's someone who makes people feel a little bit better about their problems. But whether he's elected president or not, those problems are still going to be there. And we got to recognize that.
All right, Dina, he's a narcotic. He is a needle in the arm of the vein of America. What changed? Donald Trump didn't change since 2016. So what changed that now J.D. Vance is going to be literally clasping hands with Donald Trump on some stage in Milwaukee saying Trump Vance 2024? What changed?
He wanted to become a senator, and there were a lot of people in his race, and he knew the way to rise above it was to endorse Trump. I mean, it's that simple. Sadly, people in office now care more about their own personal gain than the people they're serving, and he's willing to completely do a 360. In that interview, he also says that he thinks the thing about Trump that people like is that he's relatable. It's really sad to think that is the quality that is enough to become president. Yes, Trump definitely knows TV. He creates that reality TV moment at any turn. He did this VP as apprentice style. We went from wanting to elect a president who we can have a beer with to we like the show he puts on, essentially. But we have Joe Biden, who also came from a working class family, who has enacted so much legislation to be the most progressive president in our history, has done so much in his time that any other president has ever done for manufacturing, for clean water, for student debt, and against Trump, who had his time to show people that he's not just relatable, that he cares about the working class. And what did he do? He passed tax cuts for the rich. And to JD Vance, what did he do after he went to law school? Did he go and use his law degree to help the people where he was from? No, he went to venture capitalists. And yes, I'm in California where there's a ton of them. But the fact of the matter is venture capitalists do not help the working American. Look at Sears. They bought Sears and it went bankrupt after, 100 years in business. So he himself actually has not acted in a way to try to lift up the community he came from. Joe Biden has his whole life with public service. Same with Kamala Harris. So we have to stop listening to the words people say, looking at their action, because look at the words are nonsense. JD Vance's words are nonsense. He says whatever he wants. He said it at the time to sell books because he knew he wasn't going to sell books as a Trumper back in 2016. And now he says what he wants to try to get into that White House. But those of us who have paying attention know that it's really just a bunch of nonsense.
Exactly. With no gravitas, there's no there. This is all hat, no cattle, as they like to say in Texas. There's nothing of substance. I would have more support and respect for JD Vance if he would just dig in to what he wrote about and what he said, which is obviously the truth and how he felt before he had the Klieg lights shining on him and for his own political aggrandizement, as you just laid out. I'd have more respect for somebody. If you want to be a conservative and you want to be a libertarian, which apparently he purports to be, JD Vance, with his spiritual advisor as Peter Thiel, okay, then suck it up. But as you said, just to make the political expedient move in order to get get elected, and he was not looking good at getting elected. At one point, Peter Thiel pulled his money away from JD Vance and tried to put it somewhere else because it looked like he was going to lose that Ohio election until he held on to the third rail of Donald Trump. And that was enough to put him over the top. And I guess he's decided that his entire political fortune, he owes it to Donald Trump, and he's gonna pay him back now. But I got news for JD Vance. The American public and electorate should be able to see through the transparency and the thin gruel that makes up JD Vance's bio and his reputation. And if you're supposed to, Donald Trump just famously said recently that it doesn't matter who he picks because vice presidents don't decide the election. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree. That's somebody who doesn't have any historical lens or view. Bill Clinton got elected because when people got uncomfortable with Bill Clinton's personal issues that were coming up during the campaign about how he treated women and outside the marriage women, him selecting Al Gore comforted a lot of people and made them feel good about, well, Clinton's got some issues, but Gore's a straight shooter and a solid Boy Scout, and that's a good team. And they pulled the switch for him. Same thing with Barack Obama. I was a huge Obama supporter, but there's people out there that only got comfortable with Obama after, let's be frank, he put the old white guy named Joe Biden next to him with his 30 or 40 years of political experience and expertise. So they were like, well, at least they'll have that guy next to him. And that made people feel more comfortable. Is anybody going to feel more comfortable? For me, and I'll end it on this, this is like a McCain-Palin pick. This is like a desperation pick to pick a celebrity to sort of divert attention from a failing campaign, one that has no message. Apparently their new message is unity, only after somebody took a shot at their candidate. That's the new message at the convention. Has anybody ever associated the Republican Party with kumbaya unity? I don't think so. That tent is so narrow, you can barely get, the MAGA inside of it, let alone expanding it large enough to have people, vote in the general election. And we've just seen the most major decision that Donald Trump is going to make between now and the time people have to vote, which is who's his vice president. And he just picked an unqualified shapeshifter for that role. And I think we need to call him out on it and hit the streets related to it. What do you think, Tina?
Absolutely. I think he picked somebody who was going to be most willing to do his bidding. That's all he cares about. Pence didn't do it. He's hoping this JD Vance is young enough and willing to say whatever he wants enough to do the thing that Trump wants him to do.
I think that's a great observation. He's malleable. Yeah. He's half baked. Yeah. And all Donald Trump has to do is look at him and with a mean look or a mean tweet, he'll get him to do exactly what he wanted in a way that all he had to do was look at the trail of broken tears and law licenses. I'm not sure JD still has his law license, but I got news for him. He should put it on ice when he goes in with Donald Trump. He's going to be asked to do a lot of unsavory things.
Yes.
Right? Going in. Maybe he's going to ask for a pocket immunity on the way in, just in case.
Yeah. There's no doubt. He's going to be asked to do something criminal, unethical, immoral. Just a matter of time.
Yeah. Tina, I love doing these hot takes with you.
Me too.
Yeah, and we'll do more of them. That's our hot take about what to expect with the shapeshifter, JD Vance, and the first major decision by Donald Trump here on the MeidasTouch Network.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.